Well, thank you all for being here. I'm Nilmini Rubin, Chief Policy Officer at Hedera, and I'm delighted to be here with the Acting Assistant Secretary of Commerce, Bill Guidera. Thank you for being here.
Pleasure.
So I wanted to start with a little bit about you. Tell us about your background in internet law and what you're currently doing at the Department of Commerce.
These are very good questions. What am I doing? Hello, everybody. I'm Bill Guidera, and my role is Acting Assistant Secretary for Industry Analysis at the International Trade Administration, which is unbelievably fun. So I'll get into that. I bring to this, though, I just joined the department in June after 20 plus years on the other side of the table. So I started off in 1999 at Microsoft, spent 7 years there, 13 years at News Corporation and Fox, representing Rupert Murdoch and all of his companies. A few years with Netflix, and among other things, wound up at Prize Picks, a daily fantasy sports company on par with my friends at Underdog in the back row. So really had a ton of fun. And my background is technology and media law and public policy. So I feel like I've had this incredible opportunity to help shape the law book for the internet since I started in this business in 1999. It's been great fun. At the Commerce Department, one of the areas that I help drive is our policy team around digital and emerging technology. That is within my area as the Deputy Assistant Secretary for Services. And within that falls our financial and professional services team. My colleague Vincent in the front row here, who was exuberant in his applause as we took the stage, thank you, Vincent, is part of that team. And he is our lead person on blockchain and related technologies or in digital assets. Within that space, I've got a whole team of folks that are working on a number of different areas, including financial and professional services, but also supply chain, AI, a very significant motion for us, and privacy. And then in this role as Assistant Secretary, I get to oversee some of our work on mining and minerals, on manufacturing, a broader array of supply chain issues, and also tourism. So where we are in ITA is supporting trade negotiators and industry sectors as they come into the department, and it allows us to see a full spectrum of the U.S. industry and support them in their efforts to export more products and services. It's great fun.
I like that you called it fun, because I think for a lot of us in the room, like, we think what we're doing is really fun. And so I was wondering, many of us really think a lot about global aspects of our industry because everything we do is international. And I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about the Department of Commerce's work, your work, on U.S. global leadership on digital assets.
That's it. I mean, first off, of course it's fun. Like, how is this not fun? Like, all of us, and those of us around us in the technology space, we're cutting edge. Like, we've got really cool stuff going on. And it impacts, I mean, this is the fun part of the job too, or another fun part of it, is everything that we are doing around digital assets or artificial intelligence or internet law is impacting every other vertical. Right? So my friends in the mining and mineral business, they're thinking, how do we use AI? Or maybe how do we pay for it? My friends in manufacturing, all the technology that we are involved in is impacting what they are doing in so many ways. And so this foundational industry we are in allows us to impact essentially the entire economy. And I think that is great, great fun. The other part is like work's supposed to be fun. Like, we spend too many hours doing this. Let's have a good time doing it. I've had maybe 2 jobs that I didn't think were very fun, and I got rid of both of them. One was as a dishwasher, so I graduated to being a busboy. That was more fun. So what do we do at the Commerce Department with all this fun we're having, right? Internationally, we have an opportunity to influence trade in many ways. So our teams will work directly with USTR and Treasury and the Secretary of Commerce to make sure that as they negotiate trade deals, they are hearing from our subject matter experts to better understand what the policy implications are of each and every decision. We will literally present them with language that either should go into the agreement or should not go into the agreement. as we try to build better trade relationships, and we're deeply involved in every negotiation across the globe today. It is making sure we've got the right language in those agreements that supports the exportation of American goods and services and protects our ability to grow. We'll also work with multilateral organizations. So the OECD, APEC, ASEAN, G20, we'll get to that later. Each and every one of these are essential to what we do. We remain deeply engaged with the multilaterals. I had this awesome opportunity to go to Korea not too long ago and lead our delegation to an APEC ministerial. And talk about fun. It's really fun. It's saying like, "Hi, I'm Bill Guidera, and I represent the United States of America," to like people from other countries. Like that's kind of an awesome feeling. I think it kind of blew me away. Like maybe I had a little lump in my throat when I said it for the first time. So thank you for the privilege of allowing to serve. And it goes to this notion that this administration remains deeply engaged, not just in bilaterals, but also with the multilateral organizations. There too, our team of policy experts will weigh in and make sure that the language that comes out of those agreements and those negotiations is consistent with American principles for innovation, for free markets, for economic growth. So we're deeply involved in that sense. And I will add one other area. Literally on the phone on the way over here, my legislative affairs person called and asked me for some input on federal legislation that's pending. So a bill is moving, we have some equities on it. Our team will engage and make sure that at least that Capitol Hill understands how the department and the administration approach that issue. So those are three levers alone that we can use to impact policy for any and every industry.
So many of the companies in the digital asset space grew up in the United States. Same with AI companies. I'm curious about how you're seeing that play out when you're doing trade negotiations, when you have other countries trying to write the rules that impact digital assets and AI.
Yeah. That is a great question. There are two ways at least in which we are approached. By many, if not most, they look to us as a beacon. Like, how is the US doing it? What can we learn from them? And how can we adapt to their policy making, to their laws? Those countries and those nations seem to get it better than most. They want to learn from us. They want us to lead. They want to follow our example. They look to us as a beacon of truth on many of these issues. That doesn't mean it's easy, right? Oftentimes we have to engage with them and help them understand how we're approaching things. Sometimes we have to explain why we might have disagreements on policy proposals within the country. The other side is really pretty interesting. I see this in the AI context, and I assume we probably see it in digital assets as well. And there's a bit of fear. When we talk about emerging technologies, oftentimes folks will have some sense of fear or uncertainty or doubt about what this technology means for their citizenry, for their businesses, for their stakeholders. And I find this really, really interesting because it's not new. I mean, one of the really neat things of having been involved in internet jurisprudence over this time is we've seen trends, we've seen patterns, and this fear fits a pattern. I think there have been three major internet evolutions in my career. The first, and each of them have had this fear component. The first was putting computers in everyone's hands, right? First your desktop, and then your hand in your iPhone or your device, and that was pretty remarkable. All of a sudden, everyone could be digitized. You could take pictures and you could share them with people. 25 years ago, that was kind of a big deal. You could get rid of your old camera and just use your phone. Like that was a really, really big deal. And then the second one was access to information. And I personify that by Google, right? All of a sudden you could search for anything and have this access to it that was highly linear. My simple search brought people in to my device, and I was able to learn and study. That had a component of fear to it. When that social networking period evolved, when that search function evolved, there were a whole lot of policymakers who were like, what does this mean? At the time, some of you may remember MySpace. It preceded Facebook. And I was deeply involved. Rupert Murdoch had purchased MySpace, and I had to be the lobbyist to defend it before a number of different people, including state attorneys general, who wanted to shut it down because of fear. They feared that bad guys were going to find kids, and kids were going to find bad stuff. So we had to deal with that. And now we did. And social networking survived, for better or for worse. But we established legal principles that allowed it to grow, just like we did with digitalization. Now we're in this third evolution, and this one is arguably the most powerful, because now we have access to information and the ability to adapt it and then utilize it and manipulate it. And that's personified by AI, and I think digital assets fit into that. That brings its own component of fear. When I've chatted with policymakers or leaders from other nations, this comes up fairly often. What does this mean for my citizens' information? What does this mean for our businesses? How, and as a result, they put policies in place that sometimes over-regulate the industry and limit their ability to access the incredible productivity gains that come from new technology. And that comes back to us as leaders in the industry to educate folks about how new and modern technology is safer, more secure, more private, how it's more robust, how it can reduce cost while increasing productivity. So that fear component that I keep coming back to can be allayed because we've done it over and over and over again with the internet, and now we have a new challenge to do it in this setting. Gone on long enough. Anything else you'd like to hear there?
Well, that really connects well with the thoughts of Chris Dixon, one of our colleagues who wrote this book called Read, Write, Own, where he talks about the evolution of the internet from being able to be a tool to read information, and then you could write websites like MySpace, and now own digital assets and move them across the internet. So that very much links to a lot of the discussions here as well. So earlier, you mentioned a bunch of acronyms. So the APEC, the Asia Pacific Economic Cooperation Organization, or the G20, the G7. And I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about what the U.S. Department of Commerce is thinking about for the G20, with this being the U.S.'s 250th anniversary in 2026 and leading the G20. We're really curious about what you have in store.
That's a great question. Thank you. I understand Secretary Letnick, my boss's boss, spoke last night, and one of the things that I think he talked about was normalization of digital assets. That is a strong theme for us as we go into all these different fora, including the G20. As some of you may know, the United States will host G20 next year. We'll be the host nation. And that's a big deal. And what that means is we are allowed to not only set the venue and put out the cookies and the drinks, but also set the agendas. We do that in concert with other countries, but as the host, we have a special role. And we think in that capacity, we can shape conversations in a way that support digital assets, our desire to normalize their use, and our desire to allow innovation to flourish in this community without over-regulation. You know, you saw in the President's executive order in January on digital assets a really strong move against any centralization of banking, a move against over-regulation, and of support for the U.S. industry. I think you'll see that continue in all these fora, and the G20 is one that is of particular interest to us. Our teams have already started to do some work along those lines to make sure that our agendas are being set, we're driving the conversations in the right place, and we're getting out of the G20 what we need to grow America, increase productivity, and establish international norms, both for trade and for the rules of the road on commerce. You know, in so many ways, this administration has played a really significant role on trade policy in a way we haven't seen in a while. And I want you to know that that is towards this end of freer and fair trade in which the rules are respected and followed. I've been around the trade policy environment since NAFTA. I was working for a governor at the time, and we were involved in supporting NAFTA. I was involved when China joined the WTO. And our thinking at that time, I was at Microsoft, we were behind that, And our thinking at the time was that the rules of the road would be followed, that China would be welcomed into the group of nations, and that the rules would be followed and enforced. And we've learned a lot in that intervening period. And this administration is very focused on making sure that rules are established and followed, and that we have freer and fairer trade.
You're making me think we should get t-shirts that say normalized. So you've worked a lot on AI. And I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about the intersection of AI and crypto, and what do you see the risks to AI and crypto policy over the next year or two?
Another great question. This is super, super cool stuff. So the overlap between AI and crypto is something I need to learn from you about. And in fact, I've asked you indirectly for your input. The Department of Commerce, my team, is directly involved in the Export Promotion Executive Order that the President put out earlier this summer. He had an executive order saying we need to promote the US AI stack to the world, and he asked the Commerce Department to take the first step in that. We're in that step right now. Our team has a request for information before the world today, and we invite everyone and anyone to comment on it. We are asking industry broadly, including this industry, for your input on what the United States government should do to promote the US AI stack. And so this is happening real time, and we don't have all the answers. We need input. So I would welcome and I invite you to seek that Federal Register notice. I can give you a link to it, and respond. Saturday's the deadline, but we can open the door to a whole lot of comments on how the two industries intersect. I do see some areas where there are overlaps. In the world of innovation, there's always been a trade-off between safety and security and privacy. And so the ability through blockchain to authenticate users and to validate users is, I think, incredibly impactful. And in AI, there's a great deal of interest in how to make sure information or content is authentic. And I think there might be much to learn from the digital assets industry to help what we are thinking on artificial intelligence. I would throw in a third element that it keeps coming up in our conversations on AI, and that's quantum. Right? Somebody's going to have to tell me where AI ends and quantum begins, and how quantum and AI intersect with blockchain and digital assets. Because it seems to me like we have technological innovation that is so dynamic and can be all-encompassing in so many ways. In the same way that earlier I said tech influences everything in mining and manufacturing, it seems like tech influences tech in a way that thinking about blockchain in one lane, AI in another, and quantum in a third, probably is a mistake. There's certainly a layer underneath that unites them, and this is another commonality, and that's energy and power. This comes up all the time in our conversations. It's really fascinating. This didn't used to come up all the time, but companies tell me and governors tell me that in any conversation they're having on business development, recruiting businesses to their state or choosing where they're going to locate their business, the first question tends to be power generation and access. That's relatively new, at least in my career. And I think that's a foundational tool, so much so that we think about, is power generation actually part of the AI stack? And how does that fit in? But that seems like a foundational issue that everyone's facing. Our friends at the Energy Department and the Interior Department are all over this, and we're doing what we can to support them.
Well, your comment about AI and crypto was very resonant. At Hedera, there are projects that are built on us that tokenize data and it allows people to see the provenance of the data, permissions, allow for payments for use of the data. There's very much synergies that we're seeing live right now.
Do you remember that old New Yorker cartoon where a dog is sitting at a keyboard in front of a monitor and he says, the best part of the internet is no one knows you're a dog?
Yes.
Well, this crowd can probably prove that it's a dog, right? So we're in a different environment today. But we have so much to learn. And this morning at breakfast, I was meeting with a person from the financial industry, And he was talking about his awesome business, and he was telling me he builds on Hedera. And I'm like, I know Hedera. I'm going to see Nilmini later today. But that makes me think, we have so much to learn. So I would welcome, as an example, your input on what you think the Commerce Department ought to be thinking about. What are some of the things that might be the top 3 things you want us to focus on? Because the way I approach this is we are an entry point to the U.S. government at Commerce and at the Trade Administration. Our door's open to all y'all, as we say in the South. We want to hear from you and learn from you. So please feel free to come in, meet with Vincent and me, and educate us on things. But if you wouldn't mind, I'd love to hear a few of your top priorities.
If I should be so bold, one of the things that we'd love to see is NIST taking charge, working on the standards, especially to build out what was passed with Genius, and to really take leadership on the development of global standards. That's really in the Commerce Department's remit, and it would be amazing to see that move forward. And then, when you were talking about the development of the industry and blockchain, there's this act, the Deploying Blockchains in America Act, but a lot of that doesn't need to actually pass into law for the U.S. government to take the charge of it. The bill calls on the U.S. government to start using blockchains, digital ledger technologies, and commerce could just start doing that without waiting for the passage. So I guess those would be the 2 top things.
That's great. Did you see that we put out our GDP numbers on the blockchain earlier this summer? So the secretary was very, very proud of that. It's a whole new use, right? We're out there, we're trying, we're using the normalization term. Well, how do we normalize? Well, we use it. And so we published our GDP numbers recently, and had a number of different vectors or avenues into the blockchain where we were able to put those numbers, and we'll continue to do so. And look for us to find ways to be an example that others can follow. Starting with commerce, other agencies obviously are deeply involved in this industry in a way that's more direct than the Commerce Department. We oftentimes are tangential, but that's one way in which we seek to promote the use, is by using it ourselves.
Well, that's fabulous, and we really appreciate it. We appreciate your leadership. So, one question I had on Genius and stablecoins is, how do you see this as an opportunity for digital assets leadership and really the primacy of the U.S. dollar?
Yeah. That's a great point. One way is the Secretary of Ascent has talked about how stablecoins help support the U.S. dollar. In that, if you're using stablecoin, if I'm paraphrasing him correctly, you're oftentimes, that connection to the U.S. dollar, U.S. bonds, is a vital one that allows, that supports the dollar itself. So following his guidance, that is something we want to promote, is additional usage. The Genius Act, I think, was a great model for a regulatory approach, a light touch, or a deregulatory approach that is going to support innovation in the industry. We're eager to see how that plays out, the regulatory environment and what comes of it. Thought it was a great sign that Congress wanted to be there, and I think the President was happy to see it. My friend Vincent worked on that legislation, and we're proud of him and proud of it.
Well, we were very appreciative of Vincent's work too, also when he served on Senator Loomis's staff. So we're very grateful. So last parting question, do you have any thoughts that you want to impart on our audience today?
Yeah, sure, I'll close with this. For those of you who are in the advocacy business, A, come see me. B, help me solve problems. I have to tell you, I've been on the advocacy side most of my career, and being on this side of the table, it's really fun to see lobbyists come in and see how they do. I have seen the best lobbying presentation I've ever seen in my life, and we had an hour, 15 minutes into it. I'm like, I'm sold, and for the next 45 minutes, I just sat back and listened and watched this maestro do her work. She was amazing. On the other hand, some friends of mine who I've known for 20 plus years have come in to lobby me, and I was like, oh no, they're not very good at this. So come in and see us. But here's what made that one presentation so incredibly strong. The person had done their homework. She had an ask. It was a specific ask. She told me how she was going to lobby to get that ask fulfilled. And that meant, in some cases, going over my head or going to a parallel agency. But it was informative, it was thoughtful. And then she had follow-up with actual paper, something I could operate against. So that is a closing thought I would share with my friends in the advocacy community, is you're always welcome to see us. To be most effective, help provide a solution to problems we have that's consistent with your challenges. And paper actually works, right? It's actually really helpful to have your words so that we can think those through, incorporate those into our thinking, and then mix them in with what we hear from other industry sectors. The last thing I would say is thank you. I've been involved in politics since I was 10 years old. I've never been in the government before, not like this, and it's an absolute honor and privilege. I didn't realize how cool this job was going to be before I started. And since then, I have found that my career staff is extraordinary, far better than I expected in terms of intelligence and acumen and wisdom. And my political colleagues are extraordinary as well. It's an absolute absolute privilege to serve. And I just want to thank you for giving me the opportunity. And thanks for having me here today.
Well, I think we have our call to action. We have the RFI due Saturday on where we can talk about AI and crypto. We have our call to action to step it up and beat the colleague who came in and blew the socks off, where we can come into the Chamber of Commerce and share any other information that we have, so that Bill and his colleagues at the U.S. Department of Commerce can really advocate on our interests within the U.S. and around the world. So thank you to Bill for being here with us, and please, let's all give him a great round of applause.
Thank you, Nilmini.
Thank you.